What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So, we're going to talk about this guy today, and we're going to talk about what I've seen as far as a pistol is concerned. And contrary to what the shirt says, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. Just give me a little bit of time. A lot of you are already keyed up and know what the elephant in the room is. So, now, when I first laid eyes on this individual pistol, for about a half second, I was kind of excited about it, and then immediately after that I was overtaken by thoughts of, well, that's boring. Now, you guys know that my thought on boring is usually a really positive thing, and in this case it remains that way. It's usually a pretty positive thing because what it means is that this is yet another Tupperware pistol, okay, like polymer frame, plastic, Tupperware. It's yet another Tupperware pistol that's accurate and reliable and is of the striker fired variety. Cool. Now, first thing that we're going to go over here are the individual sights. The sights for it are adequate. They're of a 3-dot variety. They're pretty squared. Right angular stuff hooks up to the eyes pretty easily, so picking them up isn't really a problem. I'm not a personal fan of 3-dot sights. You guys have heard this from me on many occasions. And it's mostly because of personal preference. I personally wish that this was more M9-like, in that there's a lot of M9s and 92 style pistols that have that singular white dot in the center, and the rear side is slightly raised to accommodate that single white strip in the center, and then a white dot up front, where all you're doing is aligning them, and then you're fine, right? Like, that's your dot alignment. But it's okay. 3-dot sights are 100% serviceable, and there's people that prefer them. I understand that. It's no big deal. Here's the thing, additionally. Front and rear serrations, they both grip adequately. They're not in the way. They don't snag really hard. On the rear slide serrations, you don't really notice, but it does take little flakes off of your skin and stuff. They are aggressive enough to get the job done, and the slide is nice and blocky-ish, so that it's easy to grab onto the whole thing and just charge it real hard, and it works well, right? The action itself is also fairly smooth. I enjoy the fact that it is smooth, simply because, you know, running the pistol and stuff, it doesn't feel like there's any, like, grating, or it doesn't feel like there's gravel in the action and that type of stuff. Quite unlike brand new Glocks, which are very gritty and stuff when they first start. That's all that is. The front slide serrations also, by the way, make it real easy to do stuff like press checks and things like that. There are guys that do, there are guys that don't. I don't really care what you do, but for dudes that do the press check thing, I'm okay with that. Like, it's cool, and I understand why those slide serrations are there, right? The 1913 section on the dust cover is a good addition, and I believe that just all pistols with a dust cover that's railed should have a 1913 section, rather than what Glock stubbornly insists upon sticking with, and that is their Glock rail, simply so that cost on all kinds of things would drop very slightly, because of stuff like, you know, if like Streamlight or Surefire and stuff don't have to make a bunch of little light sections or rail sections in their lights, they can focus on just beefing that up and accommodating the 1913, rather than going to Glock or anything, going to the Glock, or providing provisions to go to a Glock rail and stuff like that, so that it's just one extra solid piece. That's my personal opinion on the rail dust covers. This part right here is serrated and hooked so that you can do the whole grippy thing with the index finger. I personally believe that to be useless, and it helps with twitching the whole gun down. So it's whatever. People that have used it before, I know guys that do this whole deal and still shoot pretty well, so it's whatever. There is, however, something I really do enjoy about this individual pistol, and that is this guy right here. This is very helpful in that if you run into a Type 3 of some kind, it's easier for you to strip the magazine out if it's something that you can't just contact out of there. Additionally, the magazines for it, while expensive as hell at $40 a piece, are metal on a polymer frame. It makes it easier for the things to just drop out of there easily. The shape of The reverse side button also is very helpful in that there are a lot of people that have issues with Glock pistols when they're right-handed and stuff, trying to press out that button. That shape on the reverse side of that button really does help because it dodges the middle finger quite readily. There's a lot of dudes that just have big, thick fingers that when they have to go reload their pistols, they have to end up rolling the gun and then pressing the button so that they're out of the way of their own pistol's magazine release when they're trying to drop the magazines out. And I've had to teach that a bunch of different times in different classes so that we could see less of this whole shaky stuff that people do to get magazines out. And admittedly, you guys saw me do that, but that's just because I'm used to Glocks, even though I'm not in the way at all. But I still get them out of there like so because I'm just used to doing that for both sides, so it was just a habit that was built up. Either way, it's not really going to hurt the pistol and the magazines fall out, loaded or not, pretty easily. Like you can see, that guy just kind of drops out of there pretty without any real issues. So there you go. Good positive thing to take away from the whole shape of that individual control. Now, here's something else that I actually really do like and hate at the same time. The original slide stop levers to these pistols were a little bit larger, and a lot of guys, me included, were having issues with aggressive thumbs forward grips and not being able to get the pistol into slide lock, so you'd have to alter your grip to where it was a little bit lower and out of the way and throw your thumb all the way out to one side so that you didn't trip it. Okay, cool. They reduced the profile of that individual switch. Great. Here's an issue though. Because of that, I noticed that in the older pistols, you could use the reverse side pretty easily. Now, because of the size of it and because of just how the ambi lever hooks up to the opposite side, you really have to wrench down on that thing in order to send it forward. It requires nowhere near the same amount of effort on the opposite side simply because it isn't a linkage that you have to hook up to. So if you're left-handed, and this is if you're left-handed, I highly recommend that you just run the slide on this thing. It's not really worth it to sit there and press through it and wait over time for it to loosen up. And it also isn't really worth it to go carving into things. To me, it just run the slide, like come over the top and charge it, and you're fine. Plus the action is definitely smooth enough to where it doesn't really matter. It's real easy to charge the thing without any problems. Now, I actually don't know why I loaded this thing again, because we're going to talk about triggers now. Now, here's the thing. Triggers, right? The stock weight trigger on this guy is not the worst thing I've ever run in the world, but it is a little confusing to me, and here's what I mean by that. When pressing through this trigger, you'll feel the weight stack up, and as you feel the weight stack up, you can start to press through it, and over time, or right away, you'll notice that it really doesn't break very cleanly. It squishes all the way through it. And for those of you that are like trigger savants and stuff, you see this immediately. For this individual trigger, right, as you're pressing through it, you can even watch that I'm rolling all the way through the trigger press rather than it stacking up, me starting to take slack out, and then it jumping all the way to the end. That's what's referred to, and that's what's felt as a clean break. This is a squash pretty much all the way through. So you can see that. It doesn't really jump very affirmatively, and the camera probably doesn't do it justice in that. For some reason, it rolls all the way through the press rather than breaking. So for me, it's reminiscent of something like a double action revolver or the double action mode for a double single action pistol, in that at first I was shooting this guy very much like a Glock, and man, I was having problems with this to start. Okay, I was having issues just figuring out where exactly the trigger broke free and fired the round, and I would start to flinch, and I was having accuracy problems. And this was one of the longest amounts of time that I really had to sit there and diagnose my little issues, so that I can get this thing to shoot straight. And you guys can actually see my issues with that now, and some of it I do get a little frustrated. That was awful. Let's do that. Why? 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 And the frustration there wasn't as much on the trigger as it was me being all like, dude, I know how this trigger works, but I keep approaching it like a Glock, and I was just not shooting it well to start. You guys have seen me shoot before. I usually don't drop that many rounds on target sizes like that. So, I mean, for me, it was a little frustrating to learn, but as you guys saw in the footage, I got my bearings and I started to shoot better as time went on. Now, here's the thing additionally, right? This takedown lever right here. First of all, this goes apart and comes together like pretty much every other striker-fired pistol out there. I'm not going to do a takedown of this because it's real easy to do. Okay, lock the thing to the rear, rotate the lever down, and get the slide off of the pistol. If you can't figure out the rest on how to take it apart and put it back together, you have issues. Now, so here's the thing. This takedown lever, right? It's huge, it works well, it's easy to figure out and all that stuff. I just have a slight nitpick with it. And the slight nitpick with it is that it gets hot. It gets hot quickly because it's right up in the area that gathers the most heat on the pistol, and additionally it pulls some of that heat. So as left-handed guy, this is like my trigger reference. My trigger finger is not inside of the trigger guard reference, and it's easy to reference, and it's like, okay, that ledge is right where I need to be. And then the heat reinforces that because it's like, okay, ledge, hot, great, cool, you know. So it does get a little hot. For me, it's minor inconvenience if I've done a bunch of shooting and stuff like that. However, if you're right-handed, I could see this as being annoying. I don't know why I went that way. I could see it as being annoying because as you're coming in and gripping the pistol and trying to get a good aggressive thumbs forward grip on it, I see a lot of people using that as like a thumb stop. But I was shooting right-handed with this for a little bit, and I found it to be rather uncomfortable pretty quickly. And yes, there are a lot of guys that are just going to be like, put your vagina back in your purse. It's not supposed to be comfortable, but look, I'm not saying it keeps me from shooting the pistol. I'm saying it was something that struck me as kind of odd and a little uncomfortable at first. And yeah, at the time while I'm sitting there and shooting this thing, okay, great, it's a minor inconvenience, whatever. But if you are at a class and you do shoot it a lot like so, it's gonna get annoying, you know. So, and again, it's just really a nitpick. And by the way, as far as the whole trigger thing is concerned, all of my little issues with this, I personally don't like this trigger at all. I don't. I can live with a Glock's trigger because I've dealt with mill-weight triggers before, and this is a mill-weight trigger as well, but at least the Glock trigger breaks a little bit cleaner. And I literally never thought I would be able to say that there is a newer age Tupperware gun that has a worse stock trigger than a Glock's does. Now, granted, I understand that it's a training issue, and it took me a bunch of shooting to get used to it. However, there are some people that love the trigger in this thing and vehemently defend it. Look, if that's what floats your boat, then fine. It just doesn't float mine. I'm not a personal fan of that, so whatever. Here's another thing. And again, we're traveling sort of in nitpick land, but the polymer, okay, and the grip texturing and stuff, at first, when everything's dry on your hands and you're inside your house and you're holding it in the AC and all that jazz, it's fine. It feels like that you can get a good grip and a good purchase on the pistol, and it'll run just fine in your hands, no big deal, right? But the minute that you start shooting outside, okay, the minute that you start doing a little bit of training with it, and when these get slick from like heat or rain or whatever, because it's not like it ever rains in Middle Tennessee. It rains a lot. But with the grip texturing, or rather lack thereof, the frame itself gets really, really slick. Now, there's a lot of guys that are just kind of like, well, stipple it then. And I agree. Stipple it. Because in my mind, it's worse than that of a stock Glock's grip texturing. And again, I really didn't think I would say that either. I don't like either of them. But a Gen 4 Glock's grip texturing will do its job, and it doesn't feel super slick unless it's raining really hard all day. You know, with just sweaty hands, it's no big deal, but if it starts raining real hard, it feels like there's soap on your gun. My opinion anyway. It starts getting harder to control it while you're shooting it. Or, yeah, and this is worse, right? So I would personally recommend that a lot of people that plan on doing a lot of shooting with this to stipple it. That's me personally, right? And again, we're at personal opinion for all of this, and my opinions might not be, you know, your opinions or whatever. It's just what I found. And what I found is I hate the stock grip texturing on it because it doesn't help at all. I barely notice that it's present, and it doesn't really do anything for me other than, you know, say visually, hey, there's something there. But that's it. Now, on to reliability, right? This individual pistol was lent to me by my buddy Chris Garrett. He was very gracious in that he was just kind of like, here, review it, and, you know, and I told him if I destroy anything, I'll replace it, because he's seen stuff like that happen on the channel before. So he's like, if I destroy anything, I'll replace it. And he's like, great, go test it, right? So, you know, with his kindness, he just kind of lent this off, and I just began to shoot it. Now, a while ago, I was planning on doing one of these reviews quite a bit earlier, and at the time, my buddy Aaron was kind of had his thought on a FDE slide 320, and he was just kind of like, here, do it. And I did all the shooting necessary for it, but I never quite got to a tabletop review, and I'm actually kind of glad I did, because I got more than one sample of this pistol, and what I can definitely say is that it is an accurate and reliable pistol. If you learn the stock trigger or put a new one in, I don't really care, but if you learn how the trigger works, it's a friggin' laser beam. It does shoot real accurately, especially for the size pistol it is, and it does it reliably. Additionally, another really big thing in its court is this right here. You guys can see the little silver thing, and what that is that's the serial number for the quote firearm. That is for your internal chassis, right? It's got like fire controls, a little bit of framing material and stuff like that, and that's about it. So the larger frame and, well, the frame of the pistol, the thing you put your hands on, and the slide and barrels, recoil springs, and all that stuff are not serialized as part of the firearm, so you can replace these with pretty much whatever you want. You can make this a subcompact gun, a larger gun, a gun this size, whichever you want to do. You can change up colors and all kinds of stuff, right? And a good thing that I have surmised from this is that you can sit there and get like a bunch of different boxes with different frame kits and all this other stuff, and essentially have a bunch of different guns in one. This is a modular pistol, and you can outfit it with stuff like frames that have manual safeties on them and whatnot, and that's one of the reasons why the Army chose it as its replacement to the M9. Cool, right? So by all accounts, this just seems like one of those pistols that is accurate, reliable. It's boring as far as its reliability is concerned, and it works. It looks like something that's the framework for a superb pistol, right? And that really is the case, except for the elephant in the room. As of late, I forget exactly where I saw the video online, but I'm pretty sure that the dudes in the comments could help me out with this by posting a link to that individual video, and then I'll put it in the link in the description, where there are some extremely intelligent fellows that found a problem with this guy's drop safety mechanism. Now, this pistol was tested according to like FBI regs and stuff like that on specific drop tests that they do, and where essentially a pistol that lands like so on the ground or like so on the ground are part of that test. And by the way, this pistol absolutely passed those drop safety requirements with like flying colors, okay? And the same people that discovered this issue with the drop safety mechanism really tested the shit out of the drop safety mechanics of these pistols. Like, they would hurl these things retarded distances, and they would almost break them on many occasions. But here's the thing. This individual pistol right here does have a problem. If it is dropped a specific way, then it's liable to fire. And in their testing, with the stock trigger kit in it, they were able to make it fire if it dropped in such a way to where the frame and the slide impacted the ground at the same time. They could get it to fire without input on the trigger, obviously, almost every time, like in the upper 90%. They switched out the trigger to a slightly lighter one, a flat face trigger, and they reduced it to 10%, but the 10% was there on one of the pistols that they tested. On the other one, it eliminated the problem. So it doesn't really seem like that much of a fix currently. Now, Sig has to respond to this because they have the modular pistol contract, right? They have to fix this problem, and they have to figure out a way to de-piss off all of the owners of this pistol that do have that issue with their stock gun. And what puzzles me just a little bit is that, okay, they could have just decided that they were going to meet contract standard and all that stuff, and okay, I understand. But at the same time, statistically speaking, the most shot thing in a self-defense type anything, whether it's good guy or bad guy, is hands and upper extremities, right? For instance, if I just pointed a pistol at you, the first thing that you would think about or focus on is the thing that could kill you, and that's in my hands, right? So the eyes tend to focus with great clarity on that dangerous thing. Now, why is that relevant? Because if those extremities are shot, chances are this is going to be your reaction if you're shot in the hands. But, right? Could have been louder than that, but it is what it is. Now, you noticed that when I just let my hands go and was just like, ah! And the reason why I went back like that real hard is that's what the natural reaction is to pain in an extremity. Like, everyone here has touched something hotter than they thought it was and was like, shit! Ah, that's hot, right? That's the natural thing. And what's going to happen is that whatever is in your hands just flies out from there. I'm not guaranteeing, obviously, that that's going to happen with every person, but I would suggest that it is the norm. And based on my individual study and watching of a lot of stuff that's happened to people's hands, whether it's security camera stuff or actually seeing people get hurt in that way, or in a similar way, also, that's usually the reaction is Jesus, and then the gun falls, or whatever it is that they had in their hands, right? Now, the issue with that is that this thing could fall in all manner of different places. And I mean, if I was just to do this again, and it just kind of tumbles through the air, you could see it starting to tumble this way. But as it started to tumble this way, even on camera, okay, like it started to tumble this way, and then it fell backwards, and fell in a similar way that they could actually get it to fire, right? And of course, they drop it on stuff like concrete and all that stuff. So, with this failure now identified, the response probably is going to be overwhelming once Sig figures out what the issue is. They have a good history of rectifying. This bullet keeps popping around in my freaking pocket and I can't find it. Whatever, it's gone. they have a good history of reacting in an overwhelmingly positive way to any issues that they had. The most recent that I can think of is an issue that popped up with the MCX, right? You guys can look that up. They ordered a massive recall of those pistols, and they got the problem fixed. Now, especially with the freaking Army contract coming, and them having to assemble pistols for the Army, they're probably going to react in a super positive way, lest they lose that contract. Now, apparently, the pistols that they're making for the Army are pretty much not an issue at all as far as this problem is concerned, because it would seem that the manual safety framed models of the 320 don't have this issue in any regard. But, you know, obviously there's going to be something that has to be done, because as of right now, if it were not for this individual issue, I would tell you guys that I personally don't like this pistol. I don't really want it. I prefer stuff like Glocks, and I prefer other like hammer-fired guns and stuff like that. There's basically a bunch of things that I would take over this pistol, but it's for nitpicky purposes, right? Like how hot this gets, and you know, how useless this is for my hands, and well, this guy is, and how gritty and annoying the stock trigger is. But that's all nitpicky stuff, okay? So it's one of those things that I would recommend, that I could easily recommend, but just not personally want. But with this current drop safety issue, I can't recommend this to anybody. Simply because, look, there are a bunch of little things that I could say, whatever, it's just a little problem, it'll get fixed, right? But the drop safety thing is kind of a big deal, right? In that all kinds of craziness could happen the instant that this gun gets let go from your hand, and it could land in all manner of different ways on a variety of different terrains. So I can't recommend this in good conscience to anybody until that issue is fixed, right? And when more news of that comes out, I'll go ahead and let you guys know what's going on and stuff. But until then, this is a fantastic pistol that I can't recommend to anybody, unfortunately. So it's going to be what it's going to be until the issue gets fixed. Now, come train with us. Classes are up and all that stuff. A link in the description below is up for our individual website if you want us to teach you how to use that pistol that you have and stuff like that, or even if you want to discuss the 320 thing while you train with us, that'd be great too. And the link for the website's in the description below. For website, guys, top right of the page, you'll see events list. Click on that and scroll down. The first thing that you'll see is the AK class, and you can keep scrolling to see the other classes that are available. More classes are going up because I just got my drill schedule for the year, so I'll be throwing up more classes once we figure out good dates to put them. Oh, and for mobile users, at the top right of the screen on your phone, I looked this up personally, you'll see like a little drop-down tab, like three lines, a little bubble. Press that, and it'll bring up the thing. Click on events list, and you can see what's offered. So, you know, check us out. Come train with us and stuff. If you want to join our discussion page on Facebook, whether or not you're someone who's taken a class from us, if you're anybody that's willing to have discussions on this kind of stuff, because I actually really do like dialogue back and forth on this kind of stuff, go ahead and check out the link in the description below for that, and check out all the sick Sig 320 memes that have popped up on the page lately. Some of them are actually really funny. And on top of that, if you guys want to support us on Patreon, there's a link for that in the description below. Those of you that want to take classes for us, super cheap. We have a $35 a month payment plan, where for $35 a month, which totals a little over 2 classes a year, you train with us as much as you want, as long as you want, because it's not going away, and we still have slots open for it, so you guys can fill that at your leisure, right? So, with all of that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments about the current issue. How do you think that SIG is going to, and the government, is going to react to this whole thing? And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.